Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on this your Wednesday morning, rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, I'm looking at a topic, disease and drug news. So disease and drug news. So just sharing four articles here with you about what's going on in the world relating to diseases and drugs. So top of the morning to you. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest and you're ready to take on the challenges and take the opportunities that you get today. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your words. Thank you for your love, and thank you for the blessings that you continue to give us. May it be with us, dear Lord, as we do, dear Lord, the things to maintain our health. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So looking at four articles here with you this morning that has to do with drugs and its related components, drugs and disease. So the aim of drugs most naturally is to cure disease or to give relief from disease. Now I start off this morning by reading Proverbs chapter 26 verse 2. Proverbs 26 verse 2. As the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. And so the curse causeless shall not come. So when you're in a cursed situation or a bad situation, and you say, man, this is a cursed situation, you need relief, and the relief oftentimes can come from drugs, pharmaceutical companies, and those that work in them. I spent a lot of detailed time, a lot of energy coming up with these various different drugs. So the drugs are not without serious effort and love and labor, I believe. But there are principles that exist that deals with this idea here that it is better to ascertain the cause and then try to deal with the cause, even if that cause is a deficiency in the system, or the system not producing something, whatever the reason is, genetics or lifestyle. And so in dealing with a topic like this is always difficult because drugs will give relief temporarily. But if the cause is not ascertained and dealt with, long term, they will become very dangerous. And sometimes they can be dangerous short term, as you know. But it's important to keep this in mind. And I say this, I preface this before I go much further, because I want to make sure you understand that I believe that it can give temporary relief. And in some situations, especially emergency, you need that temporary relief. But you still ought to know the cause of whatever problem you're going through, whether it's a genetic weakness or a lifestyle problem that is either hurting something in your body, or it is a deficiency in a certain nutrients. We all have a nutrient or a few that we're deficient in. We all have some weakness in one of our organs, and we have to fight on that battle or on that front to fix that problem or to help that problem. So drugs offer a temporary relief, but you have to remember, because of that temporary relief, you got to try to find natural means or lifestyle choices or some way to deal with that weakness, because long term the drug is not really fixing it. The disease gets out of control, and then it overrides the disease, and it could end in debility, death, or other problems. So we want to be able to keep that in mind. And so I'll read this text again. As a bird by wandering, and as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. So you have to ascertain, why is this happening? Even if you go and you dig deeper, you find out it's genetics and you got it from, say, your grandfather, at least you know what's going on and you know what the issue is and you know where the curse came from. But no, try to ascertain, find the cause, and then deal with it. And if you have to rely on something temporarily, just keep in mind, this is temporary. I got to figure out the cause, and I got to get to the root of this. If you're in pain, you take something for the pain. But in the meantime, you have to find out, why am I having this pain? Because that pain could be indicative of something that's going on inside of your body that needs to be fixed. And if it's not fixed, sooner or later it's going to get out of control. It's going to cause you hurt. So I say this up front. So we're talking about disease and drugs, and I want to preface that, cover that. So just in case I'm talking I say something wrong or you misread me. At least I cover myself to a certain point. Also, I read a statement from Review and Herald written in 1899 by Ellen G. White. It says drugs never cure disease, they only change its form and location. Nature alone is the effectual restorer, and how much better can she perform her task if left to herself? But this privilege is seldom allowed her. If crippled if crippled nature bear up under the load and finally accomplish in a measure her double task, and the patient lives, the credit is given to the physician. But if nature fails in her effort to expel the poison from the system, the patient dies. It is called a wonderful dispensation of providence. If the patient had taken a course to relieve overburdened nature in season and understandingly use pure soft water, this dispensation of drug mortality might have been wholly averted. The use of water can accomplish but little if the patient does not realize the necessity of strict attention to his diet. So there you have it. You work with nature, you use water, you use diet, you give sufficient time for the body to heal and to get a break. It's like somebody want to drink alcohol and take milk thistle and drink a lot of water. It will help, but sooner or later the alcohol will override and destroy the liver. So one has to give the body opportunity to do what it has to do. So with that, I'll go to my 4 articles here. And the first one is just about a disease that's rampant. This is more a problem with diet and lifestyle and the situation on the ground over there in Congo. I've been covering Congo, you see him a few times here. So Congo Ebola epidemic exceeds 1,000 cases according to the health ministry. The death toll, 629, is the world's second worst Ebola outbreak ever. So as you know, they can exceed 1,000 cases and then having a death rate of 629 because Ebola is so, it killed so fast. Congo's Ebola epidemic has now exceeded 1,000 cases, the Ministry of Health said Monday, with a death toll of 629 in the world's second worst outbreak ever. Health workers have been better prepared for this latest epidemic of the hemorrhagic fever, which caused severe vomiting, diarrhea, bleeding, kills more than half of its of those it infects. New technology like the trial vaccine, experimental treatment, and futuristic cube-shaped mobile unit for treating patients have helped curb the spread of the virus. But public mistrust and rampant insecurity in the parts of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where Ebola has struck, have hampered the response, complicating the fight against it. 5 Ebola centers have been attacked since last month, sometimes by armed assailants. The violence-led French medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières to suspend its activity at the epicenter of the outbreak last month. As a result, it is now the second deadliest in history, behind the 2013 to 2016 one in West Africa that is believed to have killed more than 11,000 people. The total is now 1,009 cases, the ministry said in a statement, but it added the response led by the health ministry in collaboration with its partners has limited the geographic spread. Last Wednesday, authorities confirmed a case of Ebola in Bunia, another city of close to 1 million people. So this is what's going on here over there in the Congo. So it's an ongoing problem, and as you know, one of the best methods that they've found to deal with Ebola is with keeping a person hydrated as they go through a fluid. Remember, as they go through a fever, remember the number one solution for fever is water. The body is hot and is heat is rising as they try to burn off whatever virus or bacteria is in the system. And so, what you do, you aid nature by keeping the body hydrated as it goes through sweating, vomiting, and so forth. This is one of the biggest things they have done over here when they have a person come to America with Ebola. So that's an ongoing thing that is exacerbated by the various different armed conflicts. So the people are dying from disease, and their lifestyle and war practices are causing the disease to get out of control. And this disease is transmitted via eating certain bush animals, bush meat. So there you go. Lifestyle choice is always a problem, and one has to know how to treat the disease. Next article I'm going to go to here is a settlement with bear. So this article is entitled Xeralto Suits. This is a drug medication. So Bayer and Janssen agreed to a $775 million settlement over blood thinners. So if you've been following the news, you notice that the opioid maker that make, I think, OxyContin, they just settled a lawsuit. And these constant settlement going on with drugs. Drugs are very problematic. So people take the drugs because they're diseased, and then they sue later on because the drugs end up causing them all kind of problem. And then I guess some of their family members sued because people die, and it's been linked to the drugs. So this is one more of those cases. So $775 million lawsuit settlement. The staggering sum settled 25,000 lawsuits filed against the company, alleging patients were not adequately warned about the risk of life-threatening complications. So that is staggering. 25,000 lawsuits. It's a lot of lawsuits. This is taken from New Orleans, Associated Press. The pharmaceutical companies behind the widely advertised blood thinner Xarelto reached a $775 million settlement in 25,000 lawsuits. Alleged patients were not adequately warned about the risk of life-threatening complications, plaintiff attorneys and the manufacturers said Monday. Bayer Healthcare, which also recently, I think, by Monsanto, so they've just been dealing with a lot of settlements. Janssen Pharmaceuticals had won 6 of the cases that went to trial. Bayer said in an email statement that the settlement allowed the company to avoid the distraction and significant cost of continued litigation. Xarelto is the brand name for the drug rivaroxaban. Among its uses, is treatment and prevention of blood clots in the leg and lungs, and prevention of stroke in people with irregular heartbeats. Heavily advertised on television, it was hawked in a widely seen 2015 ad featuring comedian Kevin Nealon, golfer Arnold Palmer, and NASCAR driver Brian Vicker. So this, I guess, is older. It's an old demographic they're going after, I'm assuming. So the lawsuit dating back to 2014 had been consolidated in federal courts in New Orleans. They involve claims that users of medication marketed by Bayer Healthcare and Janssen Pharmaceuticals were not adequately informed of risk of life-threatening complications, including internal bleeding, strokes, and death. And I paused there. So remember, I read this thing about the 2 things I'd read, that the curse causes shall not come, and that drugs doesn't cure diseases, only change the form and location. And so you're trying to get rid of one thing, but you're not addressing the underlying cause. The cause is not being ascertained, it's not being dealt with. So as that's not happening, what you really have on your hand is that the person's body is getting worse as they age, and the lifestyle doesn't change, but even get worse. and you're dealing with a drug to help the problem. Now, the thing about it is that there's many people never going to change their diet and lifestyle. They're never going to drink water. So the situation is not going to get better. So I understand why the drugs serves a purpose, because most people, as I say, will never change their diet and lifestyle. They'll just get worse and worse and accept it. But if you notice here, the life-threatening complications include internal bleeding, strokes, and death. So it is supposed to be thinning the blood, but I guess it could thin the blood to the level where it's trying to avoid blood clots, to the level where you start to bleed internally. So you're bleeding out because the blood is so thin, or it could in itself cause a stroke and it could kill you. But it's supposed to prevent a stroke, or it's supposed to deal with blood clots in people who already had a stroke, but it also causes a stroke. Because why? Drugs just change the form and location. It doesn't cure the problem, because that's not the aim of it. This is why I say, if you're taking something, you're taking it temporarily, you don't come off the drugs, because that's a problem also, because you didn't fix the problem. I've seen people, I'm going to come off the drugs. Why? So did somebody confirm via observation or blood test, like a doctor, that you don't need the drugs anymore? So until that happens, you can't come off the drugs. You have to be able to address the problem, because the issue again is, what's the cause? If you don't know the cause, how can you get off? How do you know the solution? And if the doctor say, well, this is a temporary fix, well, you use it as a temporary fix. But most people, they want to stay on the thing and not try to find solution. Your aim is to find and work real hard anyhow. So if you look at it here, life-threatening complications including internal bleeding, stroke, or death. That is, well, I guess he's trying to fix the bleeding, or blood clots, but it thin too much, which is logical, because drugs can concentrate in the system. There is no admission of liability, and we remain steadfast that the claims raised in the litigations contradict years of scientific data and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration repeated confirmation of Xarelto safety and efficacy, says Sarah Freeman, a spokeswoman for Janssen Pharmaceutical, said in an email statement. Attorneys for the plaintiffs called the settlement a fair and just resolution. In a statement outlining its details, it said a court-appointed special master and a claim administrator will be appointed to manage claims and process any appeals. It may have taken more than 4 years and 6 separate trials, but litigation like this is an important way for consumers to have a voice in matters of drug safety, lead plaintiff attorney Brian Barr said in the release. U.S. District Judge Eldon Faldon presided over the case. He issued a series of orders Monday regarding implementation of the settlement. A detailed settlement document had not been filed as of Monday midday. The plaintiff's statement said that in addition to addressing lawsuits that are already part of the multi-district litigation, the agreement resolved newly filed claims by those who had retained a lawyer to investigate Xarelto-related personal injury claims before March 11th if they register their claims by March 28th, filed suit by April 4th. Neither side had an estimate on how much an individual might get. Payments will be substantially reduced for people who filed on or after December 1st, 2015, or for those who first suffered an injury they attributed to drugs on or after March 1st, 2016, the statement from the plaintiff's lawyer. So one could imagine what was going on here. So you have a prime example here, like Jensen and Bayer are standing by their product, which I could understand to a certain degree, because if you understand, if you're having any of these type of circulatory, artery, coronary problems, it is a diet and lifestyle problem. It's a activity, lack of activity problem. and other problems that are going on. And so you're taking something that's a blood thinner. I could understand somebody say they did not properly warn the consumer, because think about it, most of the time, if you go to a doctor, the doctor say you have this problem and they just write your prescription. There's no instruction as to what it can do. Most people don't even spend the time to ever read what the prescription is all about or what are the side effects. And when you read the side effects, sometimes it states that in rare instances, a person might have this result or that reaction. Rare instances, and they might not list it even in the advertisement. So the person could be taking it and not aware that that concept of rare instances is where lawsuits like this come about. Because they'll say infrequently or rarely do people have stroke, they bleed, internal bleeding and death from it. But then when you have 25,000 lawsuits, then you start to say, probably it's not rare. It's probably more frequent than one thing. So it's important to think about that, because I've had situations where randomly a person call me and they say, I'm having this problem. And say, okay, you had any drugs? And they say, yeah. And I say, okay, let me check the side effect. I check the side effect. They say, rare. And they say, oh yeah, I'm having those side effects. I'm thinking that's kind of random. How could these random individuals having something that's supposed to be a rare side effect? Not as rare. And I think this lawsuit kind of proves that. And so this is why I say most people just want to go to the doctor give them something. So the doctor is in a situation of themselves. Sometimes it seems like they're happily in it. Sometimes it seems like they're just in it because the patient put in a situation where the patient just wants something to take, and they don't want to exercise, they don't want to drink water, they don't want to change their diet, but they want a solution for the problem. And now you have to have something to thin that thick, viscous, that blood that's not moving, and it's going to clog the lungs, it's going to clog the heart, it's going to cause all kind of complication. And so the person be like, look, I need to eat the way I want to eat, drink the way I want to drink, and I want you to give me a drug to fix it. Now, when that drug now has to override and basically liquefy all that lipids and all that gunk inside the bloodstream, and it liquefied too much because the doctor is now playing, they're trying to figure out a right balance of how much liquefaction need to happen. And then the person will end up with other diseases other than, just the person having, they're bleeding out. There's more problems here. Then they say, oh, let's sue the pharmaceutical company. And I think sometimes they should sue themselves first and then sue the pharmaceutical company. You look at some of the advertisement for some of the drugs, and you hear at the end of the advertisement, the person will start talking fast and start talking that this drug could cause this disease or that disease or this problem or that problem. And when you hear some of the problem, you're like, how does somebody still go forward and take it? And I've thought about that a lot. Why would a person have to hear in a drug advertising and hear all the problem, including death, that a drug could cause? Turn around and take it, because their sickness and their pain is so much that they need help. And if you ever try to deal with anything naturally, it's a war. So I understand a person taking it, but I think a lawsuit like this is valid, because this should be full disclaimer. At least the person know upfront this is what it could cause. But I understand why people do it, because when you're trying to deal with something, even when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to deal with this diet and lifestyle, you realize you have an uphill battle. Because if I've been eating a certain way for 20 years and I already have a genetic weakness, I have a weakness in one of my organs, and now I've been eating a certain way, living a certain way, and now I need a change, it's going to take a good, even sometime few months to even a few years to get over the hump. Because that body, it takes a whole year to change over. Some parts of the body change over overnight, but some parts takes forever. And so the problem with that is that, while that change is taking place slowly, the person is being discouraged, and the temptation is to go to the drugs. If you're already on the drugs, I say just start making the changes. Don't come off the drugs. Make the change. Go back to the doctor. Make he test you, and then make he reduce the according to his opinion, reduce the level of medication, and then slowly do that, and then so you kind of still use that, but you have the effects, the negative effects, but then you start to reduce the negative effects by changing your diet and lifestyle and changing the volume of the drugs you take, slowly wean off it, but wean onto a better lifestyle. That would be always my advice, because the problems people face are real, the struggles are real. The issues that we deal with when it comes on to the mind, the skin, the heart, the liver, the kidney, the various different organs that we have, overcoming them, overriding. In other words, pumping enough nutrients in your system to feed the organs, finding natural remedies to give nutrients that your body's missing, is a work. And as I say, it's not a work. Most disease, I think you can overcome it real fast. But if you have a disease that is a real genetic weakness, you're going to have a tough battle in your hand, because your body probably just doesn't produce enough of that hormone or that chemical, or your organ is already damaged, and you're going to find a uphill battle. And so, but when you're doing any battle to win anything, it takes work. And, but it's easier to just say, just take the drugs. Well, if you're on it, you do what you have to do and get off it by changing diet and lifestyle. Just don't get off. Don't play that silly game where people just stop taking the drugs cold turkey, and their body doesn't have the nutrients to overcome. The other problem too is sometimes the body's not producing at all because you're on the drugs. So you have to wean off and start to figure out how to get the organ to start working again. There's so much variables. This is why one has to be so cautious and take it step by step. So you see these type of things going on. It's going to keep getting worse. As I say, you see how many settlements. Bear just got sued again. Last week I covered for Roundup, and they're being sued for all these different type of lawsuits because the drugs is causing problems. But you have to understand, drugs, as I said earlier, drugs never cure disease. They only change their form and location. Because if you have a disease that is a deficiency disease, you're deficient, say, in, say, calcium, and you start taking the drugs will give you temporary relief. But the problem is you still have a deficiency. It's not going to cure the deficiency. If you have a problem with a heart rate problem, your heart or one of your arteries or whatever is clogged up, the drugs might thin it out, but the problem is you're putting more lipids or more fat into the system to reclog the system. Sooner or later, you're going to run into a problem. The drugs is not going to cure that problem. The cure is in a dietary change. The cure is on a treadmill. That's where the cure is. And when you kind of get that in your mind, you understand it's just there's no way around this. It is just the problem. If you don't drink water, because there's some people don't like water, or you don't drink sufficient water, herbs is not going to cure that problem. Notice I flip it there. Herbs is not going to cure that problem. There's no substitute for water. So no matter how much herb, or if you take drugs, if you don't drink sufficient amount of water, you're going to have some problems that the herb might help, but sooner you're going to override that, especially as you get older and the body gets weaker. So you got to deal with the source of the problem. The source of the problem is not to take drugs or even for herb for that reason, or any type of supplement for that reason. The first order of business is diet and lifestyle. As a matter of fact, the first order of business is always water. That's just how I see it. First order of business, water, and then the diet and lifestyle comes after, because it's the quickest, easiest solution to most problems. A lot of sickness. Somebody have a kidney stone. How much water you drink? You drink insufficient, then okay. So now comes the herbs and the diet. But first order business, how much water? And you could give me how many different disease, and the first order of business is going to be water. Then after we deal with the water, and we know the water is good, you're up on your water game. Then we go to what is in your diet that need to change, what is in your lifestyle need to change, and then after that, now what's What type of herbs should you be taking to help the problem? And then you'll be able to have a better solution. And then you need better learn to pray and believe in God, because you could have a long-term fight. As I say, some disease go away real quickly. Some, it's a long-term fight. I read in our text here, Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1. Isaiah 30, verse 1 says, "Woe to the rebellious children, says the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." So often you're already in a bad situation, and the worst thing you can do is add another bad situation to it. If you do, then you stop. Or you say, look, I'm doing this and I'm going to get off this. It's just the same way. If somebody says, Lord, I have depression problem, I have all kind of problems to do with my brain, and I'm on marijuana, or I'm on any type of drugs, it's time for you to stop. And as you know, cold turkey just don't work, but you have to start practicing some other means, methods to wean yourself and get yourself off it. Go to a lighter drug, do whatever. Most naturally, go to a professional, seek counsel, seek help, seek the Lord, and get yourself off it and start to practice some things and do some things for the mind. That leads me to my next topic here, which is ER visits linked to marijuana rose at Colorado hospital after legalization, study finds. So people who consume marijuana edibles may be ingesting unsafe levels because they don't feel the immediate high, researchers say. So this is written by Samar Charles over there in NBCnews.com. After marijuana use was legalized in Colorado in 2012, ER visits linked to cannabis use tripled over the next 5 years at one of the state's largest hospitals, according to a new analysis. Psychiatric ER visits were more common after people consume marijuana edibles compared to smoking and inhaling cannabis products. The researchers examined nearly 10,000 patients at University of Colorado Hospital from 2012 to 2016, finding that while sales of edibles are lower than inhaled pot products, people eating marijuana candies or food were more likely to show up at the ER with severe panic attacks and other sudden mental disorders. Inhaled marijuana cause a higher rate of hospitalization, mostly due to cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, a severe vomiting condition associated with heavy cannabis use. So I guess they eat the edibles and then it's causing them to start to just have violent vomiting. About 10% of cannabis related visits, the emergency room doctor visit, were associated with edible forms of weed, so 10%, but only 0.32% of total cannabis sale were for edible products. So I'll just pause here, and they're going to say it's 33 times, so 0.32% of all the people buying edibles, but end up causing 10%. So 1 out of every 10 visits to the ER was caused by a very small percentage of people eating edibles. The 33 times higher than what we expected, says Dr. Andrew Monte, lead author of the study and associate professor of emergency medicine and emergency toxicology at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. Acute psychiatric visits like acute panic attacks, acute psychosis, and acute on chronic conditions such as acute exacerbation of schizophrenia were also much more commonly associated with cannabis edibles. The study was published Monday at the Annals of Internal Medicine. Monte believed that people who consume marijuana edibles may be ingesting unsafe levels because they don't feel the immediate high. The effects of edible cannabis product is typically not felt until 2 to 3 hours after ingesting. So ample time needs to be given before redosing with more of the drug, Monty said. So some users overconsume edible cannabis product, resulting in adverse effects, he said. The market for cannabis edibles is growing. According to a report from ArcView Market Research and BDS Analytics, edibles spending in Canada and the United States topped $1 billion in 2017 and is projected to grow more than 4.1 billion by 2022, which is right around the corner. As the industry grows, more research needs to be done to see if edible marijuana use is direct cause of negative psychiatric events, expert says. So I'll just pause there, because as if you listened to last week, Wednesday had covered this event, or this thing that is going on in the society, which is clear proof from scientific research that marijuana causes psychosis. And with LW, you get in the pure form of the THC. So this is something that's already been proven, that psychosis is a cause. And the article is going to continue speaking in a second about this. So here you have something where the edibles, very small amount of sale, but the sale is going to almost 4 times in the next 3 years. So the sales are going up. People are more having panic attacks, vomiting, schizophrenia, all this type of acute now, not just regular mad, but straight up going crazy. Rush to the emergency room because of these drugs, because it's a mind altering drugs, but it's a negative mind altering drugs. So this is what's happening in our society. And this is Colorado. I might say this, that why Colorado is important, because this was one of the first places that legalized marijuana for recreational use. So it's not somebody's taking this because they feeling depressed, so to speak. They're taking this because they want to be happy, or they want to have the high that marijuana brings. One of the major limitations of the study is that it is observational, meaning that it does not prove the use of marijuana edibles is the exact cause of psychosis or causes an exacerbation of the psychiatric symptoms or some other illness. Prior research indicated that people predisposed to psychosis or other psychiatric disorder may be at higher risk of adverse events following cannabis exposure. But doctors caution that claiming a cause and effect between marijuana use and onset of psychosis may be an exaggeration. And I'll pause there. If you had increase at the same time that you have the legalization of recreational use in one hospital, and as they're going to say here, they need to study more hospitals. As they study more hospitals, this is something that everybody knows already. So you wonder why to talk about this stuff. But anyhow, people want to be convinced how they want to be convinced. But if you have an increase, is especially linked to edibles, but it increase across the board, whether they inhale it or they didn't inhale it, but they just puffed it. Then at the end of the day, this is what it is. This thing has been proven in so many research, but they still need to do more research to prove without a shadow of a doubt, while more people are going crazy, that this thing here destroys the brain. Surely, slowly but surely, or fastly but surely. And this is what is important to note. There's other ways to have recreational pursuit. There's other recreational pursuit. Taking this thing is no good. Notice here, studies such as these are unable to say whether it is the use of stronger forms of cannabis or edibles that is the cause of these patients having psychosis or other conditions that result in emergency visit. But it also cannot be ruled out, says Dr. Amir Englund, and postdoctorate research of psychopharmacology Institute of Psychiatry and Psychology and Neuroscience at the King's College London, who was not involved in the study, and you should listen to last week's presentation. Another limitation is that the study only looked at one hospital, so unclear whether the larger is a larger trend. Still concerned about marijuana linked to psychiatric ER visits should be taken seriously, Monte says. The finding comes on the heel of a study published last week that daily use of high potency marijuana may be linked to higher rates of psychosis. Ultimately, we urge consumers to use cannabis in moderation, use low dosages if unfamiliar with a product, and avoid riskier behaviors such as driving after cannabis use. Those who use edibles should use a much lower doses and should not redose until at least 4 hours later. That's their stance. My stance is don't use anything to do with marijuana. It's a devil weed. It's not something that the Lord had put forward. This is something that the devil has given to humanity to destroy their brains and their nervous system. As you know, you don't take ticks and then make it a pet. You look at a tick and you see it as something that is a devil insect, and so is most just a few mosquitoes, not all mosquitoes. There's these anomalies in the society. You wouldn't go to poison hemlock and then smoke it or rub it on your skin. You wouldn't look at certain type of plants that are very irritating and dangerous and say, oh, that's so beautiful. There's things that has gone awry or wreck in nature that was not part of the original intention of God's creation. This thing happened after sin. Sin introduced a lot of wickedness into our society. There's things that the Bible says are thorns and thistles that we have to get rid of, even to do farming. You don't look at those things and say, well, they're good. There's things that are problematic. There are things that have other use in nature that are brilliant, but not for food. What you say, coffee is a good pesticide. Not necessary to be used for food, because if you use it, it'll poison the insects, but won't destroy nature. So there's things there that are for other use than what we use them for. And there's things there that they're just like a devil weed. And that's how I see marijuana. It's something that I guess, I'm not 100% convinced with all the things I see when it comes on to epilepsy and stuff like that. But I guess there could be a narrow use for something like that. Anything is possible. You use Novocaine to numb the gum so you can drill into it. But as you know, we were not made per se to have tooth decay. So you look at this, and why I'm saying all that, because if you know the arguments that have been put forward by regular users of marijuana or casual users of marijuana, they put forward the argument that if God made it, it must be good for them to use it. But there's a lot of things that are in nature that we don't use, we are actually afraid of because they're dangerous. And there's other things in nature, I believe, like marijuana, that is purely easily described like what's in the Garden of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this is what makes it so confusing, because all of these things that we often say people to be careful of or use in moderation or don't use at all, to abstain from, there's things, especially abstinence things, there's things in it that can be good and they can be bad. And so it gives you good and bad. And somebody say, well, I use it because the good outweigh the bad. As the research continues to come in, it will be easily shown over and over again that marijuana, and this thing is starting to become almost like a weekly new research popping up, because the more they legalize it, the more they research it. And the more they legalize it, the more they see the harm to a whole generation of zombies. Talk about the zombie apocalypse. To me, the zombie apocalypse is what's going on now. And marijuana is part of the zombie apocalypse. I grew up with it. And you see these young men, they're floating around aimlessly, not doing anything, just living worthless lives. And this was caused by the marijuana. But what is going on in our society, I have never seen the level of zombie apocalypse that I'm seeing today. You just can go down to certain cities and you see just men and women on the side of the street like zombies, hooked on some type of drugs, and just have that spaced out look in their face, just look in the face like they're not there, like just not home. They left the building. The absence with the body, present with the Lord and absence from the body, literally, but that's with drugs. And you see this and you're like, wow, this I've never seen anything like this. This is really like out of the movies. If you ever watch horror movies, you know what I'm talking about. So this is what's going on in society between heroin, K2, the fake synthetic marijuana, coke, crack, all these things. We're literally experiencing the I don't know if we're in the beginning, or we're midway, or did we just start? Is it we're in the midway process, or we're gonna see a larger epidemic of this zombie apocalypse where people are walking around in zombie-like state, just homeless and aimless and not have anything to do with life, and lost their mind because they're going through schizophrenia and psychosis and all these things. And the reality is marijuana is part of it. And as I say, I grew up seeing it, but I would only seen it with marijuana. And even then, the level of marijuana creating all these mad people in society was much lower than at the level of THC in the marijuana. In our time, the THC is higher. Now we don't just have heroin anymore. We have fentanyl. We have carfentanil. We have fake marijuana. We have all these things that's creating zombies and dead bodies all around us. This is truly the horror show that we watched when I guess I was younger, and I see these stuff going on. So again, my encouragement is not like what the doctors over here are encouraging, to use it in moderation. My encouragement to you here and to anyone is to desist, stop using it, find other ways for recreation. Go, there's other things in life one can do that are pursued, that is exciting, that is absolutely will cause you to be satisfied in life, and you can be happy doing. But marijuana is not one of them. These high level edibles, these drugs, are not the solution. All I'm seeing is happening is that we have zombies walking around. That's all I'm seeing. You see them, as I said, you see them more in the big city areas, but you see them in the rural areas also. There was so many young men, and you're talking to them, and they're like floating, they're spaced out, and you're like, wow, whatever, wherever they're at. I don't know where they're at because I know they're not with me. I'm just talking, and their body's there, but their mind is somewhere far gone because they're floating out on some good stuff. And the movement of their hand, the movement of their body is like they're in a zombie-like state, whatever that is. So pray for you and pray for ourselves that we don't get caught up into this thing because of pain and drugs. And this is what's going on in our society. I'll read one more thing before I go to my last article here. It is from the book Ministry of Healing, page 126, paragraph 3 onwards. And it says, people need to be taught that drugs do not cure disease. It is true that they sometimes afford present relief, and the patient appears to recover as a result of their use. This is because nature has sufficient vital force to expel the poison and to correct the condition that caused the disease. Health is recovered in spite of the drug, but in most cases the drug only changed the form and location of the disease. Often the effect of the poison seem to overcome for a time, but the result remain in the system and work great harm at some later period. By the use of poisonous drugs may bring upon themselves lifelong illness. This is important to note. We could take the drug and it gives present relief, but we have to be careful because some of these drugs, as we covered earlier, bring lifelong disease. That's the scary part. That's the risk that we all go. You could take a drug and it tells you you could destroy your liver, and it destroys the liver stuff. And so we have to be careful and try to find as much natural remedies as possible. Many lives are lost that might be saved by the use of natural methods of healing. The poisons contained in many so-called remedies create habits and appetite that means ruin for both soul and body. As potent, it could cause ruin for both soul and body because it creates an appetite. Think about the opiate crisis. This is exactly what happened. The opioid crisis was the person in pain. They go to the doctor to relieve the pain. Next thing you know, they have a habit. And next thing you know, they're on heroin and then they're on fentanyl. Then they die. And they die selling themselves. Sorry, they die selling their bodies, becoming prostitutes, all this type of stuff. And so she's right, ruin of both soul and body. Many of the popular nostrums called patent medicine and even some of the drugs dispensed by physicians act a part in laying the foundation for the liquor habit, the opium habit, the morphine habit that are so terrible a curse to society. So just think about that. This is written over 100 years ago. Now we have, not just the opium habit right there, but we have the heroin habit. Now we have the fentanyl habit. But where did she say? Started with what the doctors were given. So this predated the crisis that we're currently seeing in our society. Over 100 years ago, she said, look, it starts with the doctor's office. Well, what we're doing right now, we're going through the midst of an epidemic that most of the patients they started out with a prescription. And they went from a prescription to now street drugs. Which is now the curse of society. And what she was dealing with at the curse of the society was a big problem then, but this curse blows that out of the water. It is profound what I just read to you here. And I'll read it again just for your hearing. Many of the popular nostrums called patent medicines and even some of the drugs dispensed by physicians act a part in laying the foundation of the liquor habit, the opium habit, the morphine habit that are so terrible a curse to society. The only hope of better things is the education of the people in right principles. Let physicians teach the people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, unhealthful conditions should be changed, wrong habits corrected. Then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to re-establish right conditions in the system. So that's what the aim is. The aim is you readjust your diet and your lifestyle. As you readjust your diet and lifestyle, then nature, the body, see, drugs never cure disease. Wherever here doctors say you're going to cure. You go on the drugs and you stay on the drugs until you die. That's the aim. And it might give you temporary relief. Well, all drugs do this. Think about it. Every drugs, you're always chasing the high. You take the drugs, you get the first hit. Woo, that's a high. You never get that hit again. Because guess what happens? Whenever it just fixes, you'll never fix it again. And it slowly get weaker and weaker until you have to get stronger and stronger drunk. And that is included liquid drugs, which is alcohol, or these patent medicines. That's the reality. And so what it is that the solution for the problem with disease is to ascertain the cause. I believe water has to go through everything. You wash your clothes, you wash your house, you wash everything. You wash your bed and you wash your body by drinking fluids. You purge your system, clean out the body, get out the crud and the muck and the grime out of the system, both externally and internally. You put in food, good plant-based organic diet, and you put in a lot of fluid, a lot of fruits, vegetables. You cleanse the system, and you will thank yourself for doing that. But drugs is not the solution. And as I say, it will offer temporary relief, but long term, it's a poison. Last article I'll try to share here, try to slip this one in. Measles outbreak lead New York County to ban unvaccinated children from public space. This is the Rockland County. So here, a county just north of New York City, declare a state of emergency Tuesday and ban children not vaccinated against measles from public spaces, officials said. Rockland County Executive Ed Day cited a state law which gives local officials sweeping power in the event of a reasonable apprehension of immediate danger to the public. The declaration was the most aggressive step taken by New York health officials since the outbreak began in October 2018. Effective at the stroke of midnight Wednesday, March 27, anyone who is under 18 years of age and unvaccinated against the measles will be barred from public places until this declaration expires in 30 days or until they receive the MMR vaccine. They said in a press conference. The public space includes schools, stores, places of worship, and public transit. So 30 days, I guess, until they control this epidemic, because if you're unvaccinated, you come in contact with somebody who has measles, then you're going to pass it. If you're unvaccinated and you have the measles, you're going to pass it. So 30 days. And so they can't go to church for 30 days, or they can't take public transit, and they can't go to stores and schools. I don't know how they're going to know. But anyhow, so this is the plan. I guess I could understand the school, but I don't know about store. What if the place of worship welcome people with measles and don't believe in vaccination? That's interesting. Local police will not be asked to for documentation of vaccination, but they will enforce it retroactively if a parent is found to have allowed their unvaccinated kid into public space, according to the county. If you are found to be in violation, your case will be referred to the district attorney office. Parents will be held accountable. The focus of this measure is on the parents. We want to urge parents to do the right thing. Urge is the operative word. We want parents to recognize that this is against the law. This is a government decision made to support the Department of Health. It is listed as a B misdemeanor, which is up to 6 months in jail or $400 fine. It is the lowest misdemeanor, the lowest crime there is, they added. Rockland County health official emphasized that those who are in violation of the new vaccination law will not be forced to be vaccinated, but the parents will be made accountable. The New York suburb has been one of the hardest hit by the measles due to low vaccination rate in ultra-Orthodox community. They noted that health officials are working with rabbis to increase vaccination rate to restore herd immunity. The seat of Rockland is the hamlet of New City, about 35 miles of downtown Manhattan. The county which has been one of the hardest hit by measles, is the first to use authority of law to enforce vaccination. As of Tuesday, 153 cases have been confirmed in Rockland. More than 82% of those cases had not received a single dose of MMR vaccine. 45.7% of the cases are between the age of 40 to 18. And because of the sake of time, I'll leave that right there. So just one of those news. So there are going to try to vaccinate all these other kids so that they have the immunity. As you know, between your birth and 18 is when your body develops its immunity and strength. And some of that immunity and strength comes from exposure to vaccination. As you know, in our society right now, we're bubble wrapping our kids and they're becoming more suicidal and physically weak and dying of all kind of weird disease because they don't physically deal with social problem and learn to fight back and learn to overcome problems, and physically they're bubble wrapped so they don't deal with health problem and the immune system is not strong. So I understand the idea. Protect them until they're 18 so they don't get no vaccination, and by the time they're 20 something they have some weird cancer or stuff like that. I guess you can't win really in this life. So let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of your word and for the blessings, dear Lord, of natural health, natural means, and a philosophy that enforces or encourages, I should say this. May you bless us, dear Lord, that we might see the strength, dear Lord, of changing our diet and lifestyle and living healthier, eating healthier, drinking water, doing the things that we ought to do. We thank you for your word, for the biblical health message. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks again for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning where we talk about current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.